Welcome to the Sports Story. I am your host, Mr. Glean. Today, I'm going to take a look at who survives and what is the end game in conference realignment. I truly believe that when all is said and done, in the Power 5 conferences, we're going to have 3 conferences standing. 2 of these 5 are going to be gone. Obviously, the one that's going to be gone soon is the Pac-12. Why? Well, there are several reasons why, and we will get into that. The first reason is money. Money. If you have more inventory to put out there, you're going to pay more, or these networks are going to pay more to get teams into another conference. This is why Oregon is worth more in the Big Ten than they are in the Pac-12. You have the opportunity to have bigger games weekly. You have the opportunity to have more inventory that is put out there. If you only have a 9-team conference or even a 12-team conference, that is 6 games a week once you get into the conference schedule. And we'll get more into the conference schedule and just the schedules in general in just a few minutes. So when you have this opportunity and consolidation is happening, money is the biggest reason that all of it is happening. The second reason is obviously what I just said. There's more conference games. People love their conferences. Yes, we like to see head-to-head against someone else, but at the end of the day, you want to win your conference. That's the goal. And then eventually your goal is to go play in a national championship game. But the idea is to win the conference, so you have more conference games. TV is going to pay more for those games. Networks are going to be kicking out the money for this. And if you have more teams in your conference, you have more big games, then you have the opportunity to have, multiple tier 1 games in a week. The next reason, an expanded national playoff. We are headed towards 12 teams in 2024. However, I believe that in 2026, when all this is said and done, I think it's probably going to expand to 16. And if you eliminate some conferences, that gives you the opportunity to have more teams from your conference in the playoff, which means more money for your conference. At the end of the day, again, this is about money. And these networks know it. These networks know that what brings in the money. And a big part of this is the fact that live TV is where it's at. I mean, that's what draws eyes to TV right now, is live things that are happening. So an expanded playoff will draw more interest, and people will get excited about it, especially if you start having the games on at least the first round or two. If you start having those on campus sites, and then you open it up to the G5 more, you could say, okay, all conference champions are going to be placed in the playoffs, which is another reason I think that we could potentially see some G5 consolidation happening too as we go along here. The next reason we have is, and this is going to seem weird, basketball. Basketball is going to play a huge part in this, not for the Big Ten, not for the SEC, but the Big 12. There's already talk of trying to break off and have a different contract for basketball than football. Brett Yormark has said that he would like to have the best basketball conference, not even have it be close. They're already that way, but adding some teams that will make their basketball even stronger will give them more leverage in trying to get a basketball-only contract. I could see this happening, and this is why the Big 12 is going to be the one that's going to survive out of the ACC and the Pac-12 because of basketball. Basketball is going to football runs the show, but basketball is going to be why the Big 12 survives. The last thing here is money again. Money. It all goes back to the money. Money is where it's at. You, no matter what, networks are looking to make money, schools are looking to make money, conferences are looking to make money. At the end of the day, it's about money. And we can sit here and people can go, well, I don't like that. Well, that's kind of, you live in a capitalistic society. This is what happens. You some things get changed. Will it ruin it? No, I don't think so. I think that it's going to make things more entertaining. I miss, as an Oklahoma fan, I miss the games with Nebraska. But, things change, times change. We've had conference realignment forever. So this is no different than what we faced in the past. It's just that it's on a bigger scale because social media has changed everything. The internet has changed everything. How we view things has changed everything. So it is different from where it was even, 10, 15 years ago. So the money is the ultimate reason why all of this is happening. So to recap, we have money, we have more big games just within conferences, which is going to be huge. When you can have, USC versus Ohio State in a conference game, it means something. Not just a game, but it means something in the conference, within the conference. We're going to have conference playoffs. I'll get a little more of that here in just a minute as I show you where I think we're headed for the end game for conference realignment. We're going to have the expanded national playoff. 12 teams. I think we're probably going to go to 16 in 2026 when they redo the playoffs. Basketball is more towards why the Big 12 is going to survive and why they're going to look to add basketball schools. People are going to go, well, why did they get this team or why are they going for that team? Because they want to make a basketball splash here. They know that they're only going to get so much money for football, so they're going to try and get the best, hands down, not even close, basketball conference out there. And so Yormark, I think, knew that they could not compete with the SEC and Big Ten as far as football goes, as far as money. However, I do think that top to bottom, the Big 12 probably is the best conference in football. As far as that goes, they're more competitive. The week in, week out, for the most part, you don't know who's going to win. So, and now with basketball, if he can pull it off and separate it, that is why the Big 12 is going to survive. That is why you're going to look at them and they're going to go for some schools that people are going to be scratching their head and wondering why they did this. Basketball, I believe that they're going to probably expand the tournament. I can see that happening. And if you can get more teams in the tournament, guess what? It leads back to our money. You get more money into your conference, you can pay out more to your schools. And that's where we're headed. Now, what is the end game here? Where do we head? Where do these teams go? They're going to be leaving the ACC and the Pac-12. So I see potentially what could be happening here is I see Notre Dame, Miami, Florida State, and Clemson all added to the Big Ten. It sets up nicely because then you can split them into pods or divisions. 4 pods, 4 divisions, and you have geographical fit for each of these schools, and travel will be helped out with the geography of these schools. Obviously, you have Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, Miami, Florida State, and Clemson all spread out along the Atlantic coast. They already travel that anyway, for the most part, the teams that are coming in. So that is not going to affect anything there. The West Coast, we have Cal and Stanford added to the Big Ten. That is the rumor now that is out there that they are considering Cal and Stanford to be added to the Big Ten, which kind of explains why. I don't know that we've heard a lot from Cal and Stanford about any of this, But maybe in the background they knew, we haven't heard a whole lot from Oregon and Washington, which maybe they knew they were where they were headed at some point in time. Maybe they knew this was the end game, that they were headed to the Big Ten anyway. And so if you have that group there, that would allow 6 teams to be in the pack, or excuse me, the Big Ten Western half, and you have teams within a geographical region there. The travel gets cut down because every year you would play 5 teams along, on the West Coast. Obviously, you would do some traveling to across the country to some of the other schools. We can get into how that can happen here in just a minute. The SEC. This is where it was a little tougher for me to come up with 24 schools for the SEC. But I came up with Tulane and Memphis, obviously group of 5 schools, and Memphis being in Tennessee. Do they really want that to happen? I believe that with the way we're headed towards TV and how people consume sports, the networks, the SEC network, the Big Ten network, the ACC network, obviously if we go this way, the ACC network will not exist anymore. But if we head this way, how people consume the sports, it's not going to be through a cable company. So these conferences are not going to make near the money they make by going through cable companies. This will be direct to consumer. So having to worry about how many teams are from one, state is not going to make a huge difference. Before, when you were given so much for having subscribers in this part of the country, yeah, it made a difference. But I think with the way we're headed, that's going to change. So, which is why Memphis gets into the SEC. Tulane was a former member of the SEC, and they had a solid program when they were in the SEC until they decided they didn't want to compete in sports anymore. And so they kind of fell off, and then eventually, obviously, when they left the conference, I believe that right now they have made a commitment to sports. They are a sleeping giant that could become big. The other teams that I see added to the SEC are Georgia Tech, North Carolina, and North Carolina State, to get to 24 teams in the SEC. And the tough part looking at this was trying to organize where teams were going to be. You could obviously move Memphis down with Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas A&M, and Texas. Move Florida up into South Carolina, Louisville, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, Kentucky. But trying to organize this to where you had teams kind of geographically aligned was a little tougher to do with the SEC. The end game for the Big 12. I see them. There's already talk. They're already talking to Arizona State, Utah. They're in. They're following Colorado to the Big 12. I think that a lifeline will be thrown to Washington State and Oregon State simply to get the 6-team West Coast pod division, whatever you want to call it. I can see those teams being added just simply for that. Cuts down on some travel, and again, it makes scheduling easier with if they do it right. Now, conferences aren't exactly geniuses when it comes to scheduling, because you have teams that haven't played forever within the same conference. If they do this right, this will be an easy way to schedule, an easy way to get everybody to play everybody home and away every 6 years. The other schools I could see being added: Duke, Pittsburgh, UConn, Syracuse, Boston College, and Wake Forest. Again, remember, I said the Big 12 is looking to become the best basketball conference in the country. This would allow them to do that. This also allows them to have solid football programs. Washington State, and Oregon State have had solid football programs in the past. They would fit right in here to be competitive with the Big 12 teams. Adding Duke, who every now and then has a good team. Pittsburgh, UConn. UConn has had decent football in the past. It's been a while, but I think they're headed in the right direction. Syracuse has been decent. Boston College has been decent. Wake Forest has been decent. This adds to football. But again, the Big 12 is not about football. It's about the basketball branding. Basketball is what Yormark wants. Basketball is what Yormark should get if the Big 12 presidents are smart enough with this, because this is where they can have a solid football conference, but basketball is big for them. Now, how would this work out? Scheduling for football, pretty simple. You play the 5 teams in your pod, and then you play 2 teams from each of the other pods or divisions, whatever you want to call them. So you're going to have an 11-game schedule for conference games. Now, that doesn't leave room for out-of-conference games. In fact, doing it this way, there will be no out-of-conference games. So you will play 11-game regular season schedule, and then we will start your conference playoffs. The conference playoffs will be a little bit different than just saying, okay, we're going to take the top 4 teams and just put them in a playoff, and that's all that's left. What would happen is your top 4 teams would face off in a little like tournament of their own. The second place teams would face off in a tournament of their own. Third place, fourth place, fifth place, and sixth place teams would face off in their own tournament. We would have a consolation game. So everybody's going to have 13 games played in a season. The winner of the divisional winners, the one that walks out with the tournament championship from that, automatically would qualify for the playoffs. Now, this would be huge because you could have a second place team that qualifies. If they were 12-1, they could still qualify for the playoffs. This is not going to change any of that. In fact, what it does, it makes it more entertaining because maybe they get knocked off by a second place team that in another division or pod. And so it means the games mean something. Even if you're facing a second place team, it means something. You could potentially have a third place team where the game means something. Maybe you have 2 teams that are 11-1, and the head-to-head is what ends up costing one team. So you could potentially have 3 teams that are going to be going out of a conference. You could have 4 teams. I think with the expansion of 16 teams, where I see this is headed in 2026, this is where we're going to go. So you would play every team in your conference twice every 6 years. You would play them once at home, once away. I think that right now, with the way things are scheduled, you don't get that. You have teams that don't play forever, haven't played forever, and so I think that we are headed, and if they do this, again, I've stated, presidents, athletic directors, the conference themselves, they don't necessarily always do the right thing, but this makes it easy to get to play everybody every couple of years. And you would always have a game, like for this instance, the Big Ten would always have games on the West, 2 games on the West Coast, no matter what, because they're playing 2 teams from that conference yearly. They would get to the East Coast every year, down into, you could set it up so they could get down into the Florida Clemson area every year with your scheduling. And so I think this just makes it, since we're headed this way anyway, I think this would be a good way to do it. Now, basketball, I could see where you play the 5 teams in your pod twice. You do a home and home with them. So that's 10 games. And then you play one of the other pods, or you could do like you do for football. You play a pod, 2 teams from each of the other pods in a home and home series. So you would have a 10 games within your pod, and then you would have 12 games outside of your pod. Gives you 22 games, which means you could have, 8, 7, 8, 9, 10 games in the regular season outside of your conference. So we can still get, the conference tournament, or the tournaments, preseason tournaments, and so on. Now, how would this work for your conference tournaments when it comes time? That is something that, you could put all of the teams in the conference tournament if you want to. You could put your top 4 teams from each conference or each pod in the tournament. There's lots of ways you could go with that. That is something that you could take a look at later on down the road. Again, most of this is being football driven, with the exception of the Big 12. I think the Big 12 is looking to be the best basketball conference out there. If they can get some brands for football to help them get better, they're all for it. But I think that they know where things are headed. They know that the SEC and Big Ten are going to be the football conferences. They're just trying to be the third Power 5 conference or Power 3 conference out there. So, having said that, we'll just recap here what is happening. Rumors, the Big Ten is talking to Oregon, Washington, obviously. Cal and Stanford have now been thrown out there as potential targets, with the Pac-12 probably going to be gone. The Big 12 is obviously talking to Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. I believe that that'll happen soon. The Clemson and Florida State rumor out there, how quick that'll happen, I don't know, but I don't think we're too far away from having that happen, where they break away, whether they go SEC or Big Ten. Looking at where, the rumors and stuff, at least Florida State could be headed to the Big Ten. There's rumors that Florida State and Clemson were tied together, so we'll see with that. Again, this is all speculation on my part. After watching, and hearing the Twitter, reading stories and things like that, where we're headed to 3 conferences, 3 Power 5 conferences, and I could see 24 teams, at least 20, but I could see all teams going to 24 because scheduling becomes easy, and it's for both basketball and football. Now what happens to the G5? We'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait and see how this affects them. We'll see if they follow suit and go bigger as time goes on. So with that, I'm going to be checking out. Make sure you hit subscribe and like this. If you leave comments down below in the comment section, and let me know what you think about this. Let me know what you think about these conferences here that I have put together. Let me know whether some of you go, I'm crazy and things like that. Let me know about that. So until next time, Mr. Glean is signing out. See you later.